Misa Amane is mostly treated like an idiot in the Death Note verse, with even fans finding her annoying at some parts. They treat her like an unconscious individual who's there to add an element of chaos and unpredictability. She seems to act as this plot device to make the game even more challenging for Light Yagami. But what if I told you this is wrong? She is honestly one of, if not the most, underrated characters in the Death Note verse. People like to downplay her and say she's saved by the plot or carried by Light, but it's far more nuanced than that. So let's not waste any more time, because the Goddess of Death is far smarter than you think. We will be analysing Misa's character, as that is pivotal to understanding and fairly estimating Misa's intelligence. After that, we'll explain her actions within Death Note, her outsmarting as they say. If you like Death Note content, make sure to subscribe, as I will have plenty coming in the future. And join my Discord if you wish to speak to me. If you're into stories like solo leveling or more RPG style progression stories, or perhaps even games like Elden Ring, then check out Slime Evolution. It follows an underdog, Lohan Hayes, an underdog trapped at the bottom of society who enters a VR MMO RPG and is given the weakest possible form, a slime. He assumes the identity of Halon, a mythical race slime, and holder of the mythical class Devour. Wait, am I unlocking all my slime skills in the real world? He finally realized, shocked. While others dismiss him, his Devour ability lets him absorb skills, memories, and power from the enemies he devours. Using this, Lohan climbs the food chain of a brutal open world, growing stronger with every fight. As his in-game strength begins to manifest in the real world, Lohan gains the means to challenge the system that kept him powerless. At the root of it all, it's a story about growth and classic power progression. If you like power scaling, dungeon progression, and underdog stories, this is exactly that kind of series. You can read it on WebNovel, the link is in the description, and or use the QR code, and my code for 48 plus hours of usage at 20% off. Go download it on the App Store or Google Play and check it out. WebNovel has a wide selection of great novels and comics. Start your journey with Slime Evolution today. You won't be disappointed. Big thanks to WebNovel for sponsoring this video. Their support means a lot, so go check out Slime Evolution. So right off the bat, let's get one thing clear. Misa is not dumb, but she certainly isn't a genius. Her intelligence mainly shines in her craftiness and resourcefulness. One of the biggest reasons why fans immediately label Misa as dumb is because she's compared to the likes of Light and L, geniuses who quite literally redefine the limits of the show. If you hold someone to a high standard, more often than not, you'll find yourself disappointed. Light and L are grand individuals, with the former having a deep desire to become god of the new world, whereas the other is already the greatest detective of the known world, and wants to capture Kira. Misa doesn't have ambitions remotely close to Light's or L's. She just feels gratitude to Kira and wants to thank him, and immediately becomes infatuated with Light, wanting his love. She only becomes the second Kira as a way to grab the real Kira's attention, and eventually joins Light in the killing of criminals to become closer to him and accept his approval. Misa's sense of morality is clearly skewed, as she killed policemen who got in her way. She doesn't actually have a strong sense of justice, which Light actually despises about her. Another reason fans criticize Misa is her supposed impulsiveness. She's regarded as a character that is overly emotional, and due to those emotions, makes decisions that negatively affect those around her in the long run. While this I obviously can't just say, "No, that never happens," end quote, it's pretty unfair to bash Misa for this, and I'm saying this as a white knight for Misa, when Light tends to make rash decisions purely based on emotion rather than logic. However, one of the biggest things I want to discuss is how Misa is viewed by the fandom. She's seen as a damsel in distress, a victim of Light's abuse and manipulation. But people tend to forget that Misa is an autonomous individual. She chooses to put herself in these situations. She is not trapped as most fans believe. In no way, shape, or form am I taking sides, but Light seems to get the most flack for his psychotic deeds, but Misa is kind of just given the pass. We need to remember that Misa's actions, her entire motivation for being Kira, are to please Light and gain his affection. Yes, all of the hundreds of thousands of people she's killed have all been for the sake of satisfying Light. In fact, before she even met Light, she was already a mass murderer. She essentially went rogue and planned to take the whole world hostage early in part 1 of the series. She quite literally says, If you do so as much as criticize me publicly, you will die. That just goes to show that Misa didn't really care for people's own thoughts and opinions. While you could argue she was putting on a show to gain Kira's attention, I highly doubt that Misa would have stopped. If anything, she would have gone even further. She's clearly serious about killing those who get in her way, as she brutally murders Ukita, a policeman who was just doing his job. Despite only being around 23 chapters in, Ukita's death sticks with Aizawa throughout the whole show or manga and becomes his driving force to capture Kira. While this Light is exposed and killed at the end, Misa conveniently goes free. She doesn't atone for the countless murders, and ends up taking her own life because she can't live in a world without Light. You also can't use the logic of she lost her memories, it doesn't matter, because by that logic, Mikumi should have been released after the series. It's stated that Nia burns the notebook, which actually erases Mikumi's memories of killing anyone. Another thing I find selective is her relationship towards Light. It's seen as pure and sympathetic amongst fans, but if we're actually being honest, it's completely toxic. Not only is it one-sided, but Light never wanted a relationship with Misa to begin with. He only got with her to keep her from getting arrested and to better control her, rather than letting her go rogue. Misa practically blackmails Light into the relationship as she shows up at his house, a complete stranger whom he knows can kill him very fast, and demands he starts dating her. She knows he's Kira, and she knows his name. Misa doesn't seem to value herself as much as she should, as she tells Light to use her in any way he sees fit. Light was practically powerless throughout this entire situation, and even goes as far as to threaten to kill any other girl she sees around Light. Light tells Misa he'll pretend to be her boyfriend, which she accepts. She does not demand her feelings to be honestly returned from the start, and frankly, she's fine with playing pretend boyfriend and girlfriend because she has deluded herself into thinking it would inevitably become real. That's a fantasy she lives intensively for the rest of their relationship. Light is giving her what she explicitly asked for when it comes to their relationship, but it's not like he wants this. His choices are either date Misa or risk his life. He also makes it clear that he can't be seen with her because Elle already suspects him of being Kira. So if somebody new pops up in his life, naturally he'll suspect her as the second Kira. Misa completely disregards Light's request and decides to visit him in public numerous times. Misa certainly has the perspective that love is the be-all and end-all of motivations that justifies absolutely everything, but that's just a false notion. It's a terrible bias to imply that she can just do no wrong. Misa smiles a lot and is cute, so she's clearly just an innocent angel. That's just wrong and stereotyping. But to wrap this up, Misa can think for herself, make decisions, and be held accountable for them. She has not been brainwashed into murder by Light, she murders on her own. Stripping a character of complexity and negative traits is not defending said character, it is giving them no credit and it's apologism. I'm basically saying that you're stripping her of her good writing if you're actually saying she's just all good. Misa is neither terrible because she's a girl, nor is she innocent and pure because she's a girl. The only approach that does her justice is the one that takes her as a whole, and doesn't try to make excuses for things that can't be excused, nor logically reasoned back to outer influence. However, Misa isn't the only one who makes mistakes. Light, one of the smartest characters in the series, is also prone to making dumb decisions. Now that we've gotten that out of the way, let's actually get into the times that Misa displayed her intelligence because she is greatly overlooked. And I hope that analysis is sufficient for you guys. Light is brought into the task force and has to assist them in locating the second Kira. However, his goal is to contact the second Kira and possibly take their notebook, as he sees them as a liability. This is honestly a fair assumption from Light, as Misa outright states on a recording that she doesn't have the eyes, and they should meet up and show their Shinigami to one another, which is all sensitive information. Misa then sends a journal entry over, which the task force analyzes. It is here that we get our first look at Misa's intelligence as she creates a secret message for Kira to decipher on the 5th month of the 22nd. It states, in quote, "My friend and I showed off our notebooks in Aoyama on the 5th of the 30th. It states, in quote, "We confirmed our Shinigami at the Giants game at the Tokyo Dome," end quote. The 5th of the 30th date is supposed to be a misdirection, and the real meeting is supposed to take place on the 5th to 22nd, at Aoyama. With the word notebook being obvious to a Death Note user, with anyone outside of this information not knowing, because how can you know that this is a notebook that's being used to kill people? Of course. Misa actually uses this lack of information to capitalize on, and obviously mentions it in the notebook. Light covers for Misa by calling the second Kira an idiot for being so blatant about her intentions. This leads to the task force to contact the police to cover the stadium. However, Elle also picks up on the same clue Light did, and says that they should head to Aoyama, and be on the lookout for people carrying notebooks. This doesn't mean that it's totally cooked though, because Misa left one last message inside the journal that Light picks up on once he arrives at home. On the 22nd at Aoyama, there's a constant called Note Blue, with Ao meaning blue, plus the note. Light hypothesizes that this could be where the second Kira is located, and makes a mental note to check this place out. Light and Matsuda walk around Aoyama with a group of large people, which acts as a perfect cover to prevent the second Kira from singling him out. However, this is where Misa definitively outsmarts both Light and L. We learn that Misa is sitting in a cafe completely disguised. The cafe not only has a large window, but is also positioned on the path that leads to Note Blue. All Misa has to do is wait until Kira passes by and she can get his name. Just as planned, Light walks by, and Misa immediately notices that his lifespan isn't visible, which in the rules of the Death Note, means that the specific person is the user of the notebook. Misa is also wearing a disguise, so it doesn't even matter if the cameras pick her up. They won't be able to identify her, at least not with the early 2000s tech. This strategy is so overlooked on Misa's part because, funnily enough, she could have just killed Light and ended the story here. Obviously, that would be out of character, but it's interesting to think about, especially if Misa was a different character. Misa outsmarted Light because he underestimated her, which is something he tends to do against his opponents. I also forgot to mention, but in terms of the notebook knowledge and power, Misa was actually above Light. She possessed the Shinigami eyes, which technically makes her ability to kill even greater than his. The only downside is that she has to give up half of her lifespan to do so, but it's still something that needs to be acknowledged. From here, Misa scours the net for information on Light, gets his address and makes direct contact. This actually benefits Light, whose biggest issue was making contact with Misa without raising suspicion from the task force. As I said earlier, Misa is arguably one of the most resourceful characters in the verse. Light attempts to grill her for being so careless and coming to Aoyama, but Misa reveals that she wore a disguise. He questions her about the cassette tapes, but Misa also reveals that she roped a friend into making them and re-recorded her Kira stuff all over them. Light doesn't show it, but he's actually impressed with Misa's work. He's even more impressed when she explains the Shinigami eyes to him, and outright admits that she's good at explaining complex things. Also, a bit of a random feat, but aside from Light, Misa is the only character in the series whose social skills are ranked a 10 in the Death Note databooks. This makes sense since Misa is a famous actress who's gotten herself countless brand deals thanks to her natural charisma. Although she comes off as an airhead, she's very socially aware and can read the room. Sachiko then asks Light to walk Misa down to the train station, but Light can't since being seen with her will arouse suspicion. Misa picks up on this immediately and decides to take off to save Light the trouble. Just a small, neat feat. However, Misa's most impressive showing takes place during the Yotsuba group arc. Light's memory has been erased, and so is Misa's. However, Rem contacts Misa and reveals that Higuchi is not only the fake Kira, but that she and Light used to be the real and second Kira. Misa has to carefully navigate this arc with that information in mind. She decides that the best course of action is to speedrun the task force's recapture of the notebook so Light can touch it and regain his memories. Misa plans to go on a date with Higuchi to gather information. As they are driving, she threatens to kill Higuchi if he tries anything strange, since she's the second Kira. This catches him off guard and he brushes it off as a joke, but he's still interested and actually asks if she's really Kira and to show it if she actually is. Misa deflects and says she'll only do it for the real Kira as she intends to become his wife. Higuchi straight out outs himself as Kira, but Misa calls his bluff. Higuchi stops on the side of the road and has Misa prove that she's Kira by giving her the name of a corrupt businessman. Misa obliges and tells Higuchi to turn around. She starts scribbling in thin air. It's revealed that Rem is in the car and does the killing for her. Once 40 seconds pass, Higuchi calls up the bodyguard, and to his surprise, Ginzo is actually dead. This excites Higuchi, who once again declares that he's Kira, and he has the proof hidden at his home. Misa asks him to stop killing criminals, and he agrees. When Misa returns to Task Force HQ, she reveals to Lion L that she figured out who Kira was. We then learn that Misa recorded the entire conversation on the phone, which undeniably proves Higuchi's guilt. This means that, technically speaking, Misa did solve the Kira case. Lion L were on Higuchi's trail and were aware of the fact that Kira was within the Yotsuba group, but they didn't know who Kira actually was until Misa got confirmation. This is pretty crazy considering that in this arc we got the combined power of Light and L, two of the smartest characters in the verse, and yet Misa was able to beat them to the punch. Misa clearly demonstrates high levels of self-awareness through her comments before attempting her own strategy against Higuchi. She says it's cute that Light cares, but that this time she's going to help him. And look at that, when you leave Misa to act on her own, albeit against someone like L because that's a bit different, in most situations, you can see that she's an underrated intellect in her own right. Her intuition is high, along with her ability to feel and manage emotions thanks to her work as an actress. Actors and actresses will naturally display this, as it is naturally trained within them, of course. Still good to point out, because deception is needed in a battle of cat and mouse between the world's greatest minds. She displays this ability at a high level. Apart from that though, I hope I made my point clear about Misa's IQ. While she isn't the smartest in the verse by any means, she certainly is one who, if given her own free will, could be a super lethal weapon. However, due to Light's influence, she cannot be allowed to act at her own full potential. Misa is aware that she's just a tool, but she was fine with that. To her, Kira was her savior, and for it to be a man like Light Yagami put the highest feelings of limerence that you could ever imagine. You could also just chalk this down to Event being a simp.